Welcome to Counterpoint, a co-production of the International Beethoven Project and PianoForte Foundation. It's a show about music and the intersection of life. I'm George Lepauw, pianist, founder of the International Beethoven Project, and your host for this series.
That was pianist Josu Okiñena playing Izketan by Aita Donostia, the Basque composer, about which we'll talk about in a bit. But first, I'd like to introduce Amaia Gabantxo, who is a Basque scholar and also singer who works in many different styles. But you're also from Spain and a territory that we're speaking of. I'd like to know a little bit what it is to be part of the Basque culture. Give me maybe a brief history of what it means and what it is. We know where it is and the basics. How would you introduce this?
All right. Well, the Basque country. How to say this? It spans 2 countries. 4 provinces are in Spain and 3 are in France. And we speak what is thought to be the oldest language in Europe. It was there before Latin, before Greek, and it's still there. So this maybe tells you that we are very stubborn people, very intent on surviving. To be Basque, what is it to be Basque? The beautiful thing about being a Basque is the word Basque in Basque is Euskaldun, which means person who has the Basque language. So our geography is, it's a beautiful geography physically, but the geography of the language is as important as the physical geography around us. I am a language teacher, a Basque teacher at the University of Chicago, so I often tell my students that just by virtue of coming to my classes, they are turning into Basque people, because this is what, this language can do for you. But I think that one of the peculiarities of the Basque language, which has an impact, I think, in our musical ability, because we are a very musical people, is that the structure of the language itself, because it's agglutinating, it allows for fantastic internal rhymes. So this is reflected in, I think, very good poetry and very good music. Our ears are attuned because of the quality of the qualities inherent to the language. Our ears are attuned to sound and rhythm, I think. At least I like to think this. It's my own personal theory that I pass on to my students. Maybe I'm telling them a big lie, but I think this is true. The Basque country is very beautiful. It's mountainous. We love our food. We are big gastronomes. We wake up, we have breakfast, we start thinking about what we're going to have for lunch. We finish lunch, we start thinking what we're going to have for dinner. So I think that we are probably, it's fair to say, people who relish life, and all its hedonistic manifestations, of which gastronomy, music, poetry are some. There's this phenomena in the Basque countries called bertsolaritza, which is improvised verse singing. It's been going on for hundreds of years, and these competitions, they can gather 15,000 people in them. So can you imagine a poetry event that 15,000 people attend?
That's incredible.
It doesn't happen in any other country, I don't think. Well, 15,000 people attend, but then 200,000 people watch it on TV.
Wow.
So I think this tells you as well that there is this, we love music in the Basque country. It's very ingrained. I grew up in a family where everybody sang or played an instrument, and in the smallest occasion, we would do something.
So, Basque identity, how has it evolved in the last 150 years, let's say?
That's a hot potato.
Right. It is a hot
potato.
Yeah.
How has Basque identity evolved? Well, I think you're talking about a period. It's interesting because about, I would say, 120 years ago, there was a big surge of nationalist feeling. It evolved naturally from a number of things, but what happened was there was this renewed feeling for the beauty and the importance of keeping the language alive and all the traditions, the culture that come with it. And this feeling was translated into the creation of a nationalist party, to which many artists adhered. Like, one of them would have been Aita Donostia. He was a big nationalist character in the realm of Basque culture. He did a huge job of collecting all of the traditional folk songs and turning them, doing this, what I say, a process of translation from what was purely folk memory, folk musical memory, turning it into, giving it this lyrical and classical form. I think he did an amazing job of it. And he was part of that group of people that at that time promoted, the safeguarding of Basque culture. Then afterwards, you can't talk about the last 150 years without talking about Franco, because after his coup d'état in 1936 and him coming into power in Spain, some of the policies that he imposed on the Basques were, do not speak your language, do not play your music, you're not allowed.
So don't be yourself.
Don't be yourself. You have to be a Spanish person.
Right.
So Basque culture went underground because of this, and it was protected in a particular way because of that. So it still survived on the wraps like that. Then because of, you have to understand that when a people are pushed against very hard, then they respond. And what happened then was that ETA, the terrorist band, emerged. I am oversimplifying things here massively for the purpose of this conversation. But ETA, for many years, the presence or the existence of ETA had a detrimental effect on Basque culture because people identified everything that was Basque with terrorism.
Right.
And this was, counter to the ideology of many people who think that you don't necessarily need to associate Basqueness to violence. But we are at a good time now because, thankfully, Franco has been dead for 40 years now.
Right.
And in these 40 years, we have overcome ETA as well. And we are, we are at a point, I think, that's optimistic. I mean, there's still loads of troubles. We still need, some form of balance, in many regards. The promotion of Basque culture, both inside of the Basque country and in the context of Spain and in France, and now abroad, through things like my job here at the University of Chicago, those have become hugely important. And, I think that with things like, the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, the whole renewal of the idea of what Basque culture is, and this sort of... there's an interesting thing, because we are possibly the oldest language, the oldest culture in Europe, and yet we're a very modern people.
Right.
We have this built-in system of contradiction, I think, that we live very happily with. And I think that this is something that we can more and more try to bring to the world. This notion that you can be very old and you can be very new at the same time. And I think that something like what Josu is doing is a part of that. And, I'm very, very proud to have had a little bit, of influence in his coming here and helping him do all this. But at this point in the Basque country, I would say that, there's a huge crisis in Spain, and that obviously affects the Basque country too. But I think the mood is quite optimistic, and I think that we are beginning to realize that what we have is very beautiful and very special. I always tell my students that if the Basque language was an artifact, it would be in the most prestigious museum in the universe, kept under
Right.
10,000, feet
Right.
feet strong glass cases,
Yeah.
because it is that rare and precious, But I think that this is something that does not need to be kept on the wraps. It
Right.
needs to be brought forward in this process of translation that I like to speak about, to bring it to the global age,
Right.
and to show to the world, that it is important
Yeah.
that these things survive, that it is important to look at these cultures and look at these languages and see how they work and how they map out different existences.
Right.
No?
And they tell a wider story.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible, perhaps, for you to recite something in Basque, a little piece of poetry, or a few, just so people can hear the sound?
What could I say? I don't know, off the top of my head. I can't think of anything right.
Or
off the top
a
of my
song, or something that...
I could sing a song, I suppose.
Or even if it's just, just to hear the musicality of the actual language.
Mm-hmm. What could I sing? I could sing a song that has actually... I could sing a song that has already sort of reached a little bit. In the 70s, it reached America.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Joan Baez sang Txoriak Txori, which is a song by a fabulous Basque composer and singer. Whose name right now? Escapes me.
That's
the
okay.
Name. It
That's
doesn't
okay.
matter.
We can always...
But I can sing the song.
At least give us a taste.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Egoak ebaki banizkio, neria izango zen. Egoak ebaki banizkio, neria izango zen. Ez zuen alde egingo, baina horrela ez zen gehiago txoria izango, baina horrela ez zen gehiago txoria izango, eta ni txoria nuen maite, eta ni txoria nuen maite.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Do
Thank
you want to know what it means?
Sure, please.
It's a beautiful poem that just says, if I clipped its wings, it would no longer be a bird. And the bird is what I loved.
Loss
Mm-hmm.
and nostalgia.
Mm-hmm. And also letting things be what they will be. Freedom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can introduce for us Josu and tell us a little bit about Josu and how he came into your life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Josu is a wonderful human being, first of all, an amazing musician. How Josu came to the United States, it's a beautiful story. He produced this album. He put it together, the complete works of Aita Donostia. And when he did this, it was revelatory in Spain, because no one, in the context of Spain, in the context of Basque culture, no one had taken the trouble to put all this together, and the piano and voice pieces as well, which is a different album. He collected all this work and he played it in this wonderful voice that he's got at his fingertips. And this was revelatory not only for the Basque musical world, but the Spanish musical world. And in Europe, people all of a sudden said, who is this guy, So for that reason, he got the support of several institutions in the Basque country, in Spain, in Europe, to come to America on a U.S. tour. and he's been to New York, he's been to San Francisco, Reno, he's going to Miami. I think I'm forgetting something. And in the University of Chicago, we, well, I asked that he would be invited too. So this was, especially important for me because I'm a musician and I love the work that he's done. So, and then I when I was sent all the materials that that come with, organizing a tour like this, I came to know a little bit more about him. He is the research coordinator in Musikene, which is like the biggest musical institution in the Basque country, and he's doing amazing work there, like collecting and cataloging the works that we have of the different Basque musicians. He's also, but he's like, I feel identified with him because he, like me, is both a scholar and a musician, and he has managed to bring the two sides of his life together in a beautiful way. And I think this is worthy of admiration, that you should never have to give up one side for the other, that you can combine both. His PhD was on interpretation, and he used the example of Aita Donostia's work to illustrate all of his theories and ideas. He's a wonderful person to know, to listen to talk to laugh with, So I'm very, very pleased that we have him here. And I'm very pleased that you give us the opportunity to show him to Chicago and the world.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for that introduction and for explaining to us a little bit about Basque culture, which is, I think, mysterious to most people. And we'll continue talking with Josu about Basque culture and about his work, and we'll probably come back, in further interviews to discuss more in depth. Thank you, Amaia.
Okay, thank you, George.
Josu Okiñena, Basque pianist, Spanish pianist, European pianist, global traveler, as musicians are, citizen of the world. You just played for us some really precious, beautiful music from the Basque country by a composer that we don't know here in the United States, but we're finding out more thanks to you. And the recording you just made by Aita Donostia, a person who had a very interesting life, it seems, from what I understood. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more first about who this composer was and when he lived and what drove him to compose, to set this music down and elevate it.
Aita Donostia was a great composer, great researcher, and great folklorist. If I had to really show one of the characteristics of his career, of his entire life, I would say that he was a very modern person in that time. He is still modern nowadays, but one has to imagine in his historic context how a priest at the beginning of the 20th century can ask for permission to go to Madrid and to Paris in that time, to be in touch with the most modern cutting-edge tendencies, to elaborate and to make the compositions, the majority of them out of the Basque folklore that he himself collects and he arranges, and he publishes one of the most important songs books that never have been done in a folk music like the one in the Basque country.
Would you say that his approach was similar to that of other ethnomusicologists, perhaps We think of Kodai, of Bartók, maybe even Percy Grainger and others.
Well, I would say ethnomusicology today in 2014. I think at that time it didn't exist, the term ethnomusicologist. I would say folklorist.
Okay.
I think is one has to be in that context to understand the nationalism in the whole Europe continent. I mean, we have to think in Chopin in Poland, in Glinka in Russia, in Smetana in Czechoslovakia, in Kodai and Bartók in Hungary. Of course, what they did was to discover that there was a popular culture, a fantastic popular culture that could be like a little basis to build up the whole building of their compositions.
It also relates to cultural identity. And defining what it is to be of a certain place.
Yes, but at the same time, they defend their own culture, their local culture, but they elaborate it in an international way, with the most important tendencies of the musical language of that time. We have to think, it's nice to think about what Manuel de Falla does, also what Béla Bartók does with the Hungarian folklore. I mean, of course, they take the roots of the popular music, but they create chords like the major-minor chord in 1928 by Béla Bartók, or the clashes that Stravinsky uses for his compositions. We have to think that Petrushka is written out of a folklore theme, many folklore themes. So it is to admire the local and the popular culture, but they develop it with the most cutting edge and the most advanced languages of the time.
So, in terms of identity, and Spain is a very, of course, multicultural country, entity. What would you say is Basque music? Is Basque music Spanish music, or is Basque music entirely unrelated to what we think of as Spanish music?
I cannot put a border in any of the cultures. I mean, I would say, of course, Basque music has his own identity, but you cannot make an island, such as you cannot make an island with Hungarian culture. It is inside of the Romanian territory. Our Romanian music is inside the Hungarian. I mean, the relationship of a living body work like the folklore is very difficult to define. But of course, there are characteristics that can define the peculiarities of the Basque music and the Basque folklore. Such as, there are a lot of writings of Aita Donostia where he explains the characteristics even of the Basque people and how they are related to the music. But to put limits, I think, is very difficult.
So in the piece that you played, which translates as dialogue, which is sort of apt, considering that it seems like we are in a dialogue of, what is actually Basque and how does that influence perhaps other parts of Spanish music, and how does Spanish music influence Basque music. How would you describe this piece, and as a Basque person yourself, how, what is it, what does it mean to you? Is this based on a popular melody that you know separately from this work?
In this piece, you can hear that it's a slow melody, which is a very romantic style. I mean, the majority of the Basque folklore is this way. Usually are sad songs. Donostia says that maybe it's because of the weather, because it's always raining, because it is very foggy all the time, and so on. Because the Basque people live in the mountains, so he creates this relationship between these characteristics and the ones of the folklore. Of course, it's a Basque melody, but the influence that I would say concretely in this piece is not Spanish; it is French. I mean, the way it is treated in impressionistic way, I am sure that it's the influence of the French composers of the time. One has to think that due to the aesthetic of Donostia, he's much more influenced by the French culture than by the Spanish one. Because at that time, there was the neo-modal language out of Gabriel Fauré, and used by Claude Debussy, Eric Satie, etc. And this fitted much better with the idea and with the creations that he wanted to produce. So, in my opinion, I would say 100% that the real influence of Donostia when he elaborates his compositions with the Basque folklore come from France, not from Spain.
Interesting. Now, most people don't realize that part of the Basque country does extend into France on the other side of the Pyrenees Mountains.
Sure.
And that one of France's greatest composers was Basque also, part Basque anyway, Maurice Ravel.
Sure.
And Maurice Ravel seems to have had an influence on Donostia's life as well. What's the story?
Not only an influence, but also a friendship, a very nice friendship. The story is, I think we are mixing up two different things. One is the cultural word, and another is the political word.
Sure.
If we talk about Basque culture, we can define exactly what Basque culture is, because there is an identity of Basque feeling and Basque culture. But when we talk, if this is in Spain or is in France, we are talking from a political point of view. So there we are creating limits that doesn't allow us to explain the richness that this culture has. My opinion is better to speak culturally.
Right.
Because it's going to be much easier and better communicated the way this culture is. So that's why Maurice Ravel, in one of the letters that he writes in 1920 to Eugène Couls, his teacher in Paris, he asks Eugène Couls that there is an abbot called Aita Donostia that asked him for advice. Aita Donostia wanted to show his music to Ravel, and Ravel was a bit scared because he thought it was gonna be a very monastic music, because this abbot, he had been in a monastery for so many years, and he had a surprise. He said, "It's a fantastic music. It just requires some indications or some advices to improve it, but it's a fantastic composer." So he asked Eugène Couls to help him, because Maurice Ravel, he has so much work to do that doesn't have time.
Right.
But in that letter, Maurice Ravel explains, a compatriot of mine, the Basque abbot Aita Donostia, and he explains, because you must know that Basque people, we have two different countries. So there you can find also the feeling as a Basque identity that Maurice Ravel has.
Right, which is fascinating. So just for factual information, what are Aita Donostia's dates, birth and death?
He was born in 1886.
Okay.
And he died 1956.
Okay. Okay, and he lived mostly in the Basque country?
Yes, exactly in the north of the territory of Navarra.
Okay.
But he traveled a lot. I mean, he used to go to Madrid and to Paris many, many times.
And so you also had a very meaningful friendship with Manuel de Falla.
Yeah.
And they exchanged many letters. And
yeah.
What was de Falla's take, if you know, on Donostia's music?
I think the way he elaborated the harmonizations of the folk songs. I mean, the admiration of Donostia when he listened to the 7 canciones populares, 7 folk songs by Manuel de Falla, it's It's obvious, and it is written in the letters. And he uses a lot of ideas that takes out of Manuel de Falla's music.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because we have to think that, of course, Falla collects the cantejondo and all the flamenco culture.
So that's more southern Spanish culture.
Yes, Andalusia. It is in the south of Spain.
Right.
Very rich
So
culture.
the opposite end of the country.
Exactly. It's almost 1,000 kilometers in the south.
Yeah.
And what does Manuel de Falla is to use also the influence of Maurice Ravel. The way he does the orchestrations is very similar to Ravel. And also the most cutting edge tendencies of the time. It's a very modern music.
So now that you've come out with this project, do you think it's going to have an impact on Basque musicians from 2014 and into the future as they rediscover their own heritage? Do you think this is contributing something? And you think that Donostia is going to become, maybe is he a father figure for Basque music?
Absolutely. Because he has been known much more for the religious music. One has to think that at that time there was a very important reorganization of all the chant Gregorian. So Donostia had to work a lot on it. And maybe these religious compositions and choir compositions and all the liturgy stuff really transcended, but not these non-religious compositions, which are, in my opinion, very modern and very, very important for the international piano repertoire, let's say.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So what is Basque music today in the classical sense? You probably know a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
You work with contemporary composers.
Yeah, there are very, very good composers in this time, of course, and it's difficult to identify them as a Basque composers because they are very much in tendencies where you cannot find the concrete elements of the Basque popular culture. But I think it must be this way in this period.
Interesting. I'd like to know more about you, Josu. Tell me a little bit about your background. What led you to become a musician? What did your family encourage you? Are you born in a musical environment, or how did you find the piano?
Yeah. Well, my mom, my grandmom, they were pianists. Not professionally, but very musical way. My father is a very musical too. And since I was a child, I knew the piano because it was in the house. So when I was 3, I went to the piano and started playing what my sister used to play. And they didn't let me play because you are going to break the piano. So. But one day I went there and I started playing one Chopin waltz because I heard it to my sister.
Wow.
And then they had a little shock and they say, okay, then we have to let him go and play. And that's the way I started with a teacher, with solfege and all the stuff. And when I was 16, I went to Madrid to study with Félix Lavilla, a great musician and pianist in Spain that came from the Basque country. And he had been playing many times for hands with Aita Donostia.
Oh, really?
They were great friends. And through him, I knew Aita Donostia.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a privilege to have that connection for you.
Yeah. Unbelievable, yeah.
Wow.
He died last year, and that's why the CD is dedicated to him.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. And so, how many years did you study in Madrid?
Then I was 5 years in Madrid with him. And then I moved to New York, to Juilliard, because I started the contact with Oksana Jablonskaya.
Of course.
It was a very nice experience there. But then I got the possibility to play for Maria Curcio. In my opinion, one of the greatest pianists and teachers in the 20th century, a former student of Arthur Schnabel. And then I decided to stay next to Maria 5 years in London, and that was really a very, very interesting period. I played sometimes these musics for Maria, and she was really, really impressed when she listened to it, because she had never listened to Aita Donostia. I mean, she knew some Spanish repertoire through Rafael Orozco, of course, one of the greatest students of Maria, and one of the greatest pianists in Spain. But it was a very, very nice experience to be next to Maria so many years.
Well, so the world of pianists is a small world, and there are not that many families. And I, very briefly, unfortunately, but still, I had the chance to work a little bit with Amaia Curcio, who, as you said, was a pupil of Arthur Schnabel, like Leon Fleischer in the United States, and that carries its own weight because, of course, Schnabel is down the line from Beethoven, Czerny, Leschetizky, and really an interesting lineage.
Yes.
Since we're also in this beautiful PianoForte studios here in Chicago, and the piano is a central focus, maybe we can talk a little bit about Maria's approach and what you did get from her over those 5 years. What would you say stays with you the most as really valuable lessons?
Her thought. When I go to the piano, she's it's very difficult to explain this feeling, but she's inside my mind. I mean, the approach that I have now to the sound, to the structure of the piece, to make sound out of the score. I mean, there is a very strong presence of Maria in me.
So I'm sure you had a chance to talk with her about her experience with Schnabel.
Yeah.
What do you think she took from that, and what do you think she then made her own?
I think the most important thing that she learned from Schnabel was that she had to be herself. And that's the most difficult thing that one teacher can teach. Because many teachers, what they do is to impose to the student how you have to play. No, you have to give the tools to the student to let him be himself. There you make a free student, a free pianist. And that's very difficult. I don't know if you understand.
Yeah, I do. The freedom, that's the finding one's voice.
You have to find your own way. I mean, I don't know if the interpretation you do is good or bad, but it is yours.
And Maria was able to convey that to her students.
Absolutely.
So all her students around the world today are all very unique.
I hope so.
You think so also?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, she was very clear. And when she spoke about the structure was an objective thing. Okay, but let's think sound. Sound is personal. Rubato is personal. So she didn't tell you how to do the rubato. She used to tell you, you have to do rubato. But there are many ways to do it. Find yours.
Right.
And this is very rare to find.
Is there an anecdote about her as a person that sticks in your mind?
Many.
What would be something that would describe her in to people who don't know, did not know Amaia Curcio?
Imagination. Unbelievable. She always had new ideas. Always. Yeah. You could play for her, doesn't matter, the Chopin concerto, Beethoven concerto, Schumann Papillon, or Carnival, whatever. 1,000 times. She always had something new to tell you. That was for me something amazing. The experience that she had with sound.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's the nature of art and interpretation.
Yeah.
So, as a touring pianist, and you've been doing this for a few years. What's your perception at the moment of the evolution of the field of music and performance?
In my opinion, the world is changing too fast, let's say, a lot. The evolution is huge. But although we have been immersed in a terrible crisis, economical crisis, in my opinion, the culture, the music, is a necessity such as food. We cannot say, no, look, this is luxury. No, this is something for rich people. No. This is something that all of us we need. Let's think about the primitive human being, what they do in the caves when they draw. We need culture. We are human beings, so we need food, but we need too culture. We cannot say that culture is, no, after food. Of course we need to eat to survive, but culture too.
Where do you think you will be in 20 or 30 years, and what do you think you would like to be doing at that time?
Me?
Yeah.
I would like to go on in this way and finding every day. I mean, for me, the real prize of this career is being myself every day.
Are you yourself every day?
Yes. At least I try it when I play. I don't know if I do it well or bad, but I do it my way.
Is there anything that you'd like to add to this conversation at this point?
Just I would like to thank to Chicago and to thank to you, of course, this possibility to present this music that I think is great. If we don't communicate, we don't exist. So art exists just when we have the possibility to communicate it, and this is what I want to thank you. And what I want to thank to Chicago, having opened the hands to this music.
Thank you, Josu.
My pleasure.
Maybe we can leave off with some music.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to do more Donostia or maybe Defaya or something. It's your choice.
I would like to finish with one of the preludes by Donostia.
Okay, which is called
Ilargitan emaste kallanerons,
and
which means singing, looking at the moon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Counterpoint. For advertising and sponsorship opportunities, please visit internationalbeethovenproject.com. I'm George Lepauw, host and producer. Thank you for listening.